Okay, folks, here's my cheat sheet. There goes my pen. Today I'm gonna answer a question that I've been asked a heck of a lot on my Instagram, and it's where do I start? I'm 22, how do I get to where you are? Stuff like that. Or just in general, where do I start in life? Because I have goals, I wanna have things, all that stuff, right? So this is my cheat sheet. So I'm gonna look down at this because the way I shoot my videos is I shoot once and I just post. So here we go. Okay, where do I start? First of all, I'm 40 and I'm doing it, right? And I don't know if the algorithm will let me say that, but I don't know anything. That's how I go through what I'm doing, right? So I humble myself. First of all, you gotta start there. You have to humble yourself. You have to know if you're 20 something, you're coming out of college or something, you know nothing. You have not been impacted by the real world. You've been in college, you've been in a situation where you're learning book knowledge or whatever, some life experience, but you know nothing. Start there. Stop thinking you know everything. That translates to you need to be coachable. One of the things I noticed with a lot of people in the next gen, and even when I was growing up in my gen, there were a lot of people that did not allow others to speak into their lives and did not absorb what they were teaching them. And I know we all do it to our parents. We don't want to hear our parents tell us what to do, right? Because we grew up with them and we want to like fight against the system in a small way against our parents, right? So you gotta drop the ego. You gotta know that you know nothing, and you have to be coachable. That is critical. I learned that in the Army, pretty harsh, and that opened my brain to being able to learn and grow, right? The second thing is, if you have no direction and you don't know, or you're stuck in a job and you don't know which way to go, the first thing I would do is I would ask people a lot of questions that are actually doing it. And this might sound so simple, but it's really not, because, for example, before I even went to college and was in the Army, I used to surf in Southern California 3-4 days a week. And we used to go up to this little breakfast place afterwards once in a while and sit out front. And this one time, this guy drove up in this brand new 7 Series BMW. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy, right? And I just asked him, I said, hey, you know, I love cars, and that's an awesome car. What do you do for a living, right? As simple as that. And I found that over many years of doing that, I started hearing very similar trends in where the money was, right? And I'm not saying that money is the most important, because it's not. It really depends on what your long-term goal is for yourself, right? But that was the way that I at least engaged with people to learn a possible direction, right? Now, I served in the Army. I was an airline pilot at 23. I did a lot. I was in a lot of student loan debt, had no money, right? So even when I came out of there, it was even more important for me to ask that question, because after I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, I had no freaking clue what I was gonna do for a living. I thought sitting behind a desk would be boring. I'm flying jets for a living, and then I quit because I'm not making any money, right? And I'm drowning in student loan. My monthly income was $1,277 flying the jet, gross pay, and my student loans were $850 a month. Where did I have any money to live, right? So I knew I didn't want that life, so where I started was asking questions, right? Now, once I found out some industries that I thought I wanted to tap into, right? And mine being real estate. Now, even when I found out I wanted to be in real estate, I was like, what direction in real estate do I want to go? Title, escrow, loans, agent, broker, blah, 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 right? There's a million different things you can do in real estate. I chose commercial real estate finance, which was great for many reasons, but as soon as I found out that was the industry I wanted to be in, I started surrounding myself with people that I knew in that industry, whether they were friends of mine that became real estate agents, whether they were big producers in my hometown that I could poke some questions to at the local bar. I knew where they hung out, right? And I'd go, it's funny, there was this one gentleman, I've talked about him before, his name is Bill Ruane. He was the top Remax producer in the entire country, and all he did was sell our little hometown of El Segundo, right? And I knew where he was gonna be every Saturday night. And there were times where I just was there drinking too, you know, after college and stuff, and I would just ask him some questions. And eventually you catch on to some things, and anyway, that's just one example. I'm gonna jump into something totally different. Video games are awesome, right? We all like to play video games. Unless you're a streamer and you're making millions of dollars, they don't do shnikes for you. Again, the algorithm, right? YouTube. What I would suggest is you need a balance. You need an outlet, but you also need a balance, right? So instead of spending so much time, whether it's video games or actually social media, you need to learn new things. You have more information in this day and age at your fingertips. I mean, you're watching it right now. If you've made it this far in a video, I appreciate you, number one. But number two, you're 5 minutes and 30 seconds in, and some of my material, it's gonna get really good, by the way, so hang on. Some of my material might sound kind of basic, but you are at least taking the step for 6 or 10 minutes of your entire 24-hour day to learn something new. That is a step in the right direction. You should be learning as much as you stinking can. Now, rewinding, if you find an industry that you're interested in, because man, that has a lot of potential long term, you should be learning everything you can know about that industry before you even step your foot in that door to go work for someone or to do it at all, right? That is really important. Sidestepping into something that runs parallel to that is once you find the thing that you want to do, you need to live, eat, breathe that thing, okay? I had a lot of weekends and nights where my friends were going out to do things, and I chose to stay back and learn my skill, improve on my skill, or future my business at the time. And it wasn't my business, but the gentleman I was working for, right? I was trying to develop relationships and learn more about deals and underwriting and the ins and outs and how the banks did everything and yada yada. So I spent a lot of time, a lot less time doing those social activities and more time doing the thing that I knew one day would allow me to live like no one else, right? Because I grew up with $0 in my name, especially when I came out of college, $0. I told you my income at the time, and I was $150,000 in debt, the majority of which was student loans and credit cards. I was getting pummeled. So you gotta live and eat and breathe that thing. Now, the most important thing, it doesn't matter what your age is, if you are looking to transition or you're looking to get started, one of the most important things, and I can't stress this enough, don't buy this crap. Do not buy stuff. Live below your means. I literally outlined it in red. Live below your means. Say it again. Live below your means. 7 times. Live below your, I'm gonna let you say it 7 times. That's when it starts to stick. You have to live below your means. Do not go lease a BMW. Do not go buy fancy crap. Your shirts, your pants, go to Target. They have $6 t-shirts. Go to, I know it's an ego thing, I know. Go to Goodwill and buy your clothes. I'm telling you, if you can figure out how to live for a couple grand a month, right? You can go make a couple grand a month in your sleep when you're committed to doing it, when you're committed to survival, right? Now, I'm not saying, well, I live in LA and my costs are higher. Good. Well, go find roommates and go figure it out. Go figure it out. We rented a house, rewind back, when I was beginning my journey, we rented a house with 4 of us that all rented rooms in this house. Our monthly nut apiece was like a little above $500, right? And that was manageable. Before that, I lived in my cousin's house in a spare bedroom. And eventually when I started making a little bit of money, I started paying her. She'd asked me to, and I was like, thank you so much for the time you've let me stay here. You let me build up some reserves. I'm happy to pay you, yada, yada. You need to not buy nice things, period. Stay out of and pay off all your debt. That should be your first focus. Don't buy fancy things and maintain this until you own assets that make you money. While you are living in this very low expense bracket, right, where your costs are extremely low each month, you need to learn how to live like that and be okay with it and be happy with it. Because if you can maintain that same standard of living as you grow and as you learn and as you're working for someone, if I was living that same way until I owned assets, if I was even living that same way and didn't have any of this stuff right now, I would be so wealthy it's not even funny. Now, I have also had a bunch of tragedy in my life with people dying that I've been very close with, and so I let myself live a little, right? I do it in a smart way. These cars are all paid for. This is paid for. All the rest of my cars that aren't here, they're paid for. I do it in a smart way. So worst case, I can move some money, right? But if you're not in that position, and you will be someday if you commit to this, then you need to not have that crap, okay? That means don't go out and buy $20 drinks. I'm telling you, please, if you can live like no one else, I think it was a Dave Ramsey quote. He's like, live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later, right? Something like that. So live like no one else. Keep your expenses low. And then here's the kicker to this entire thing. If you apply everything I just went through in my list, now you need to go bang down doors. You've found what you want to do. You've found the industry you want to be in. You're going to commit. You're going to go all in. You're going to live, eat, and breathe it, right? You're going to live below your means. Now you need to go and you need to go work for a company or work for someone where you can learn while you're employed, right? So, for example, when I first got out of the airline, one of my buddies who was in commercial real estate finance, had a ton of respect for him. I was constantly asking him questions about commercial real estate finance. And finally I decided, you know what? It's gonna be boring, I'm gonna be at a desk, but I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna go all in. I got hired, I banged down the door of this company in Orange County. I got hired. I was in a back room, basically not given any direction at all. And I was trying to learn as I went on what the heck I was doing. And all I was doing is asking people in the office and loan officers. I probably bugged the hell out of them. Sometimes I got told to leave their office because I was just always a pest, but I was learning and learning and learning and learning and learning. And I was making $36,000 a year to do that in a back room, right? And I was commuting an hour each way. So I still had no money, paying the student loans, all that stuff, living below my means, barely could afford to make it to work and back and still eat in the week. And I finally learned all these skills. I've got 6 months there, I learned all these skills. And then I went to another company who did the same thing and I pounded down their door. They weren't even hiring. And I brought my skill set that I had learned from there and I showed them how I was gonna bring value to their company. And then I ended up getting hired as a young grasshopper, or I should say, just kind of like a worker basically for one of their top producers in their company. And I saw that as the greatest opportunity known to man. And you believe I committed everything I had to that person. And to this day, he's still my business partner on the West Coast. And I've gotten into this story. I'm not gonna go into that part of the story now, but I committed, I worked my ass off. I don't care if it was Saturday, Sunday, night times, I don't care. If a deal needed to get done, we did it. I knocked it out, I learned. Eventually, I was the one doing deals. Eventually, I was the one being offered a partnership. Eventually, I was the one that stepped out, found a location, and started our own company together, he and I, and became that old company's one of their biggest competitors. That's how you start and that's how you do it. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it has at least inspired you. I know it's basic. I'm gonna say one more thing before I go because it's also something very important I forgot to mention. So if you hung on this long, you're in for a treat. You need to figure out who you want to be when you're 65 years old. If you're already 65 and you're just starting, you need to figure out who you're gonna be when you're 75 because you still got plenty of time in this life. People live to be old, right? So, what I did was I figured out in 2009 that I was going to be a real estate investor who owned 1,000 apartment units and had freedom and income and all this stuff, right? I mean, that was who I was gonna be. And I had a loving family. I created all these goals side by side, but in my professional side, I was gonna be this big real estate investor. And starting in 2009, that's who I started living as I was at that time. Even though I was broke, had no money, had a little bit of income because I've been working in the industry a little bit, but I was still just grinding, right? Still drowning in debt. But I created myself as this person in the future and that's who I lived as. And then what I did was I took all the steps necessary to become that person. And now, fast forward, I mean, my business partners and I, we have built in the last 5 years, $100 million worth of commercial real estate deals, right? Which we own half of. And we're continuing to build our pipeline and grow more. So because I created myself as that future person and lived into it, I started getting closer to that goal of who I'm gonna be at 65 much sooner than I expected. And it was because, and I just kicked the camera, sorry, you're shaking. It's because I did all these things. I did all these things. I actually learned these things from asking questions from all those people that were wealthier than me and knew more than me. That's where I got these tips from. And I'm spitting that to you right now, all in one package to give to you. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it brought some value to your life today. That's all I got. Have a great week. Have a great Thanksgiving. If you're watching this after Thanksgiving, have a great Christmas and holiday. Love you. Like, subscribe. Talk to you later.